The Bose QC15 has always been regarded as the king of noise cancelling headphones, but the Bose QC15 sound quality hasn't always been so well regarded. Well, recently Bose released the QC25, and they promised not only to have improved comfort and sound quality of the QC25 over the QC15, but they also claim to have improved the noise cancellation. Well, I bought a pair of QC25s at JB Hi-Fi in Australia for $360. I've been using them for over a week now, almost daily. And I've got to tell you honestly, this has been a difficult product for me to kind of evaluate and tell you whether or not it's competitive with other portable around ear headphones. Why do I say that? Well, you're watching Lachlan Likes a Thing, and let's find out. Hey everyone, welcome to Lachlan Likes a Thing, the show where I take a thing and see whether or not I like it. Now the thing we're looking at in this video is the Bose QuietComfort QC25 active noise cancelling headphones. Now before we begin the review, I just want to apologize if you hear any construction noise coming through the window. It kind of makes me wish that we had active noise cancelling in this room, but sadly these things aren't to be. Let's get on with the review. First of all, let's start with the design. So the QC25, I think, nails it in terms of the design. It's a relatively understated look for a headphone. It's much like the Bose Soundtrue in that regard. But what I like most about this headphone is that this is a headphone that has relatively large ear cups, and it's got a relatively complex folding mechanism. It folds into a more compact shape, and it folds flat, and it goes into this really nice included carrying case. But at the same time, it's still very lightweight and it still feels relatively robust. So the fit and finish on this headphone, on all the kind of parts, is really quite nice. Most of the parts are plastic, but they seem to be high quality composite plastics. The headphone itself weighs about 200 grams. The ear pads have really nice, soft, supple material on them. The headband has this quite nice feeling fabric finish on the top and this foam finish on the bottom. There's lots of little, tiny nice touches. For instance, there's a soft touch rubber guardrail around the ear cup so that when you fold it up, the ear cups don't scratch each other when they rub against each other. So everything about this design more or less gives me the impression that it's been quite well thought out. Now there are two things that I can say about this design that I don't like. One of them is that the headphone is so lightweight that it almost feels a little insubstantial. That can't really be helped. I think it's still a robust headphone and I'm pretty confident in its durability, but it certainly doesn't feel as kind of chunky and solid as something like the Audio-Technica M50X. The other thing that I can comment on is that the cable, the detachable cable that comes with the QC25, I don't really like. First of all, it's a proprietary cable. The connector on the end is something like 1.5 or 2.5 millimeters, and so you're going to have to go to Bose for replacements if the cable ever breaks. The other thing is that the cable is, it has a fair amount of memory, so it tends to develop kinks over time. It tends to tangle quite easily, so not a big fan of the cable. But apart from that, I think it's a well-designed headphone. Next up, let's talk about comfort. The QC25, as you can probably guess from the large ear cups and the light weight of the headphone, is a very comfortable headphone on the head, and it's especially more comfortable because the drivers are very steeply angled inwards on the QC25, which gives your ears a lot of room to breathe. So the end result is that the QC25 is one of the most comfortable around ear portable headphones that I've ever worn on my head. It's the kind of headphone that you can wear for hours and hours with very little discomfort, and it's almost as if Bose was thinking about how to make this headphone comfortable for long-haul international flights. Surprise, surprise. And that gets us into the kind of bread and butter of the QC25. The noise cancellation on the QC25 is amazing. It is honestly terrifying how good the noise cancellation is on the QC25. Now, I don't actually have that much experience with noise cancelling headphones. I tried the Parrot Zik on my channel and I thought that was too heavy and too expensive. I have the Beats Studio 2013, which ostensibly has noise cancellation, but the noise cancellation isn't very good, and it produces a constant hissing noise, which is just very frustrating. So I've always regarded noise cancellation as a bit of a gimmick. But the QC25 has completely sold me on noise cancellation. The noise cancellation apparently was improved with the QC25, and Bose claimed that they specifically targeted low frequency rumbling to try and improve the noise cancellation performance in that regard. And I can tell you, whatever they've done, it has worked, because when you wear this headphone on a train or on a bus or even out on the street, it just blocks out so much noise to the point where it feels like this must be what it's like to be going deaf, right? The noise cancellation is really, really good, and it's not just good in terms of blocking out just only train or plane noises. It blocks out things like wind blowing across the headphone. It blocks out air conditioning noise and computer fan noise. It blocks out a lot of environmental noise that I wasn't even aware was present in the environment before I tried using the QC25. And so it's really quite startling in how effective the noise cancellation is. Now, it's not perfect. The QC25 isn't perfect at blocking out a high frequency incidental noise, so people suddenly talking, clapping noises, that kind of thing. It's not going to block out sudden noises because the noise cancellation circuit doesn't kind of anticipate those kind of noises. But that said, it still reduces those noises somewhat, so even if someone is playing music near you, the QC25 will reduce that noise to a large extent. So the noise cancelling on the QC25 produces a slight hiss, but it's a very high frequency hiss. It's quite quiet, so it's the kind of thing that you can ignore very quickly. You can get used to it very quickly. It's not distracting like the Beats Studio 2013. The noise cancelling actually works without the cable plugged in, so if you want, you can wear this headphone on your head with the noise cancelling turned on, like a really high-tech pair of earmuffs. The other thing about the noise cancelling is that it uses a AAA battery, and it comes with an alkaline battery. It's rated for 35 hours on alkaline batteries, so it's also rated for 28 hours on rechargeable nickel metal hydride batteries. And in the kind of week that I've used this headphone, I haven't noticed the battery life, I haven't got the battery warning indicator anytime soon, so I'm pretty impressed with the kind of performance of the battery in that regard. Now, you may think it's a bit weird that it doesn't use a lithium-ion rechargeable battery pack, but honestly, I think that that's actually a good thing, because I think they designed this headphone so that if you were just about to board a plane flight and you realized that this headphone was running out of charge, you could waltz into any convenience store and buy a AAA battery in any airport around the world. So again, I think that's a thoughtful decision on their part. Now, the QC25 can actually be used without the noise cancellation turned on. So the headphone still works even if the battery has gone flat. But when you turn the battery off, when you turn the active noise cancelling off, it actually also turns off the internal DSP and equalization. And it means that the headphone sounds completely different as a result. And that brings us to the sound quality of the QC25. I'll put this plainly. When you turn the active noise cancelling off on the QC25 sounds like garbage. And I usually don't use such strong language in my reviews, but it sounds awful without the active EQ being applied. It sounds muffled with a really anemic bass line, and the vocals have this weird sucked out feeling to it. It just feels hollow and plasticky. And basically, it sounds so bad that I think that Bose clearly never intended for this headphone to be used without the noise cancelling being turned on. It's just a little kind of bonus feature that you get with a headphone, that it works without the noise cancelling turned on. And it also makes me think that the acoustic design of this headphone was done in such a way that Bose prioritized getting this headphone to have the steeply angled ear cups and to be super comfortable, and not necessarily thought about it in terms of designing this headphone to be acoustically high performance in terms of the actual physical build of this headphone. And they thought that that was okay because they could just fix it all with the active EQ and the DSP afterwards, kind of fixing it all in post, to borrow a phrase from a completely different field. So the end result is when you turn the active noise cancelling on, it fixes a lot of the deficiencies of the headphone. When you turn the active noise cancelling on, the QC25 sounds much better, but it doesn't sound, still doesn't sound fantastic, I would have to say, given the price of the headphone. It has a really mellow kind of sound, particularly in sort of the mid bass. It has a really rounded tone in the mid bass, and there's a bit of emphasis in the lower treble or the upper vocals that makes vocals in particular stand out. They have a sort of raw quality to it, not quite to the point of sounding honky or nasal, but there's a certain emphasis in that regard. The treble is rolled off on the QC25, so it lacks a bit of detail and texture and kind of airiness to the sound, though I think that's probably done again to ensure that you don't get long-term listening fatigue from high frequency sound. Overall, it sounds like the Bose Soundtrue around ear in that it's a mellow, relaxed sounding headphone, and that's honestly not too bad. The thing that is really bad on the QC25 is that the bass for a headphone of this price, the performance on the bass is really sloppy. So this headphone has more mid bass than sub bass. It sounds kind of gummy, it sounds kind of sloppy, and there's not a kind of tightness or punch or kind of visceral rumble that you would expect. And it's not just about the quantity of the bass, it's actually just about the kind of feeling of solidity and impact that is really lacking on the QC25. The bass sounds a bit rubbery. If you compare the QC25 to other headphones, the kind of deficiency in the bass line really makes itself apparent. So compared to the Audio-Technica M50X, which is a cheaper headphone, the M50X sounds so much more punchy and tight than the QC25. Compared to the Beats Studio 2013, again, the Studio 2013 still sounds tighter than the QC25. It's just, a better, more solid sound overall than the QC25. And the problems with the bass become really apparent when you increase the volume. The bass actually starts to sound very sloppy and very, it's just not a great sound. It's not terrible, but it's just not up to the kind of performance level you would expect given the price of this headphone. But here's the really funny thing about the QC25. Even though I think it doesn't sound as good as other headphones, costing around the same amount or even half the amount of the QC25, I still think it actually sounds very good in practice when you wear this headphone, because when you wear this headphone with the active noise cancelling turned on, you end up still being able to hear a lot of detail in the music that you wouldn't be able to hear on other headphones, because this headphone manages to remove so much low frequency rumble and environmental noise that you still get a lot of, you still get a really pleasant listening experience. And especially, it's a nice listening experience because you can turn down the volume on the QC25 to very, relatively low levels, lower than what I would usually listen to on my headphones, and you get to protect your hearing, but at the same time you get a sound which is, quite agreeable, it's quite pleasant, and at lower volumes the bass kind of response on the QC25 isn't quite so distracting in terms of its poor performance. Personally, I think the QC25 is a good headphone. It is super comfortable, it has a nice robust build to it, it has that amazing noise cancellation, and even though the sound quality isn't best in class, it does the job. So I'd be happy to recommend this headphone to anyone who is looking for noise cancelling headphones, or anyone who is at least even vaguely curious about noise cancelling headphones. Now normally I would tell you at the end of this review, go out and try this in the in-store demo, and you can decide whether you can decide for yourself whether or not you'll like the QC25. But I have to say in this case that I don't think the in-store demo is going to give you a really good sense of what it's like to actually use this headphone around and about in the city, and just what the noise cancelling will do in terms of changing the experience of wearing these headphones. What I can tell you is that Bose, if you buy directly from the Bose website, apparently they offer a 21-day no-risk trial. So if you don't like them at the end, they give you a full refund, including shipping charges. And for this kind of headphone, I actually think that's an offer that's worth taking up, because you can try them for 21 days and really get an experience of how effective the noise cancellation is on this headphone. If you do try the QC25, please leave a comment. I would love to hear what you think about these headphones. If you found this review helpful, please click the like button and consider, just popping a tip in the YouTube fan funding tip jar. You can talk to me on Facebook at facebook.com/LachlanLikesAthing, or on Twitter at LachLikesAthing. Thanks to all my regular subscribers, and as always, happy listening.